Before we begin, make sure you're somewhere quiet. Turn off the lights. Put on your headphones. Because the stories you're about to hear aren't just scary. These are the kinds of experiences people don't talk about. If you enjoy true horror stories, unsettling encounters, and disturbing events that happen to real people, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's begin. New Year's Eve has always felt strange to me. Not exciting. Not hopeful. Just loud. Too loud. Like everyone is trying to drown something out. That feeling got worse after what happened on December 31st, 2019, the last New Year's Eve before everything changed in the world. I was 22 at the time and living alone in a small ground floor apartment just outside a mid-sized town. Nothing fancy. One bedroom, thin walls, cheap rent. The kind of place where you hear your neighbors cough, argue, and flush the toilet. Most people had plans that night. Parties. Bars. Fireworks. I had none. My roommate had gone home for the holidays, and I didn't feel like forcing myself into celebrations I didn't care about. So I stayed in. Ordered takeout. Planned to watch the New Year's countdown on TV and fall asleep before midnight. I locked the door around 9 p.m., not because I was scared, but because I always did. That habit probably saved my life. Around 10:30, the noises started outside. Laughter. Drunk voices. Firecrackers popping somewhere down the street. A car horn blaring repeatedly. Normal New Year's Eve stuff. But then there was a sound that didn't fit. Knocking. Not on my door. Somewhere outside, close. At first, I thought it was a neighbor's door, but the sound was wrong. Too slow. Too deliberate. Like someone knocking with their knuckles instead of their hand. I muted the TV and listened. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. They echoed faintly, like they were coming from the hallway just outside my apartment. I stood up and checked the peephole. No one was there. I told myself it was probably someone drunk, knocking on the wrong door. It happens all the time in apartment buildings. I sat back down. 5 minutes later, it happened again. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Same rhythm. This time, it was definitely my door. My heart started beating faster, but I still wasn't scared, just annoyed. Hello? I called out through the door. No response. I checked the peephole again. Empty hallway. That's when I noticed something small but wrong. The hallway light, the one that always stayed on, was off. It was never off. Management left it on all night because the motion sensor was broken. I didn't like that. I locked the deadbolt again even though it was already locked. Another knock came almost immediately. This time, it was softer. Like whoever was on the other side knew I was listening. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted my neighbor across the hall. Hey, is someone knocking on doors out there? She didn't reply. I waited. The TV countdown continued in the background, muffled voices cheering, laughter filling the room like everything was normal. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I can hear your TV. My stomach dropped. I stared at the message, rereading it again and again, hoping I misunderstood. I typed back. Who is this? The reply came instantly. You're the only one home on this floor. I felt cold all over. I checked my locks again. Door locked. Deadbolt secure. Windows shut. Another text came through. Everyone else left hours ago. I didn't respond. I turned off the TV. The apartment went silent. A moment later, my phone vibrated again. Why did you turn it off? That's when the knocking started again. Not 3 knocks this time. 1. Slow. Heavy. Right at eye level. Like someone leaning close to the door. I backed away, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I whispered, "Go away." The knocking stopped. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then a sound came through the door that made my blood run cold. Breathing. Not muffled. Not distant. Right on the other side of the door. Slow, controlled breaths. Like someone trying to calm themselves down. My phone buzzed again. 10 minutes until midnight. I didn't know how they knew. I didn't know why they cared. I only knew I was trapped inside my apartment with someone on the other side who clearly wasn't leaving. I grabbed the kitchen knife and stood as far back as I could, eyes locked on the door. Another message came through. When the countdown starts, everyone will be loud. No one will hear you. I started crying without realizing it. Then, from the hallway, a new sound. Keys. Metal scraping softly. Trying the lock. Once. Twice. They stopped. A final message appeared on my phone. I just want to start the year with someone. Outside, fireworks exploded. Cheers echoed through the building. Music started somewhere above me. The world got loud. The doorknob turned. Hard. Again. And again. Then. Silence. The handle stopped moving. The breathing disappeared. I stood there for what felt like hours, knife shaking in my hand, afraid to move. At midnight, people screamed Happy New Year, outside. Fireworks rattled the windows. I stayed frozen until dawn. When the sun finally rose, I called the police. They checked the hallway. No signs of forced entry. No one on the cameras. But taped to my door handle, hidden on the inside curve where I couldn't see it through the peephole, was a small piece of paper. It had only one thing written on it. A countdown. 10. 9. 8. The rest had been torn off. I moved out a week later. Every New Year's Eve since then, I turn off my phone. And I never stay home alone. I've always liked being alone on New Year's Eve. Crowds make me anxious, and the forced happiness of parties never felt real to me. So when December 31st, 2021 rolled around, I decided to stay home, order food, and let the night pass quietly. I lived in a small apartment complex just outside Denver. Nothing fancy, for floors, old carpet, thin walls, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. The kind of place where you recognize faces but don't know names. At around 9:30 p.m., I turned on the TV for background noise while scrolling on my phone. Every channel was already gearing up for midnight, hosts smiling too hard, graphics counting down the hours, fireworks footage looping. Everything felt normal. Too normal. That's when I noticed something strange. On one local channel, one I didn't recognize, the broadcast looked off. The screen showed a single camera angle of what looked like a room. No hosts. No graphics. Just a grainy image of a small living space. Dim lighting. A couch. A window with curtains half drawn. It took me a second to realize what bothered me. I recognized the room. It was mine. I sat up straight, heart skipping. The couch was mine. The coffee table scratch. The lamp in the corner with the bent shade. Even the faint reflection of the TV glow on the window glass. The camera angle looked like it was coming from the top corner of my living room. But there was nothing there. I stood up slowly and looked around. No cameras. No blinking lights. Nothing mounted anywhere. I laughed nervously and told myself it had to be some weird art broadcast, some coincidence. I flipped the channel. Static. Every other channel worked fine. I flipped back. The room was still there. My room. Except now, the angle had shifted slightly. like the camera had moved. The timestamp in the corner read 11:17 p.m. That wasn't a live broadcast. That was now. I reached for my phone to record the screen. That's when my phone buzzed. A notification. Unknown number. Don't turn around. My stomach dropped. I stood frozen, staring at the TV. On the screen, I was standing in the middle of the room. From behind. My exact posture. My hoodie. The way my shoulders were tense. The camera was behind me. Closer than it had been before. The timestamp changed. 11:18 p.m. I slowly, carefully turned around. Nothing. Empty apartment. But on the TV, the camera panned smoothly toward my front door. The door handle started to move. I ran to the door and locked it, my hands shaking. On the screen, the door opened. Someone stepped inside. Tall. Wearing a dark jacket. Face obscured by shadow. They closed the door gently behind them. I wasn't breathing anymore. The person stood still for a long moment. Then they looked directly into the camera. And smiled. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You're early. I backed toward the kitchen, grabbing the largest knife I could find. On the TV, I did the same thing. The person in the video tilted their head, watching. The broadcast cut to black for half a second. When it came back, the camera was no longer showing the living room. It was showing the hallway outside my apartment. My hallway. The angle was right in front of my door. The timestamp read 11:21 p.m. I heard footsteps outside. Slow. Measured. Stopping right in front of my door. A knock. Soft. Polite. On the TV, the door swung open. The person stepped inside again, but this time, they weren't alone. There were others behind them. At least 3. All smiling. All looking at the camera. My phone vibrated non-stop. Messages stacked one after another. Almost time. We like to watch the countdown together. You're the main event. I screamed and ran for the balcony, throwing it open and climbing over the railing. I didn't care about the fall, I just needed out. I dropped onto the snow-covered grass below and sprinted barefoot across the courtyard, pounding on random doors, screaming for help. Lights turned on. Doors opened. Someone called 911. When police arrived, they searched my apartment. No one was inside. No signs of forced entry. No cameras. No extra people. They asked me what channel it was. I turned on the TV while they watched. Every channel showed normal New Year's Eve programming. Except one. The same channel. The screen now showed a blank room. Not mine. A different one. Empty. The timestamp read 11:59 p.m. Then text appeared across the screen. Happy New Year. The channel disappeared forever after midnight. Police chalked it up to stress, hallucinations, or a prank using hacked signals. But here's why I know it wasn't. At exactly midnight, my phone buzzed one last time. A video file. No sender. No preview. Just a file name. Countdown.mp4. I never opened it. But sometimes, when New Year's Eve comes around, my TV turns on by itself. And for just a second, I see a room that looks like mine. Waiting. I used to work overnight security for a small office complex in northern Illinois. It was one of those jobs where nothing ever happened, just sitting alone in a glass booth, watching cameras, drinking bad coffee, and waiting for the sun to come up. New Year's Eve was supposed to be the quietest shift of the year. Most businesses closed early, everyone went home to celebrate, and the roads emptied out by midnight. I volunteered for the shift because the pay was time and a half, and honestly, I didn't have anywhere else to be. That was my first mistake. The office complex sat near the edge of town, backed up against a patch of woods and an abandoned industrial park. 3 main buildings, a parking garage, and 1 security booth at the entrance. I'd worked there for almost a year and knew every camera angle by memory. By 9:30 p.m., the place was completely dead. No cars. No lights. No movement. I locked the gate, did my first patrol, and settled back into the booth. Around 10:15, I noticed something odd on camera 4, the one pointed toward the rear service road. There was a car park back there. That alone wasn't terrifying, but it was strange. That road was gated, poorly lit, and not used by employees. I zoomed in. The car was off. No headlights. No interior light. Just sitting there. I radioed dispatch. "Hey, I've got an unregistered vehicle on the rear service road. Any scheduled maintenance tonight?" Static for a moment, then negative. "You're clear." Probably a turnaround. I told myself that made sense. Still, I watched the camera. The car didn't move. At 11:02 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam, but something told me to pick up. "Security," I said. There was breathing on the other end. Slow. Measured. Then a man's voice said, 10 minutes. "What?" I asked. The line went dead. I checked my phone. No call history. No missed call. Nothing. At 11:10, the rear service road camera flickered. The car's headlights turned on. But the engine didn't start. The lights just came on. Then my phone rang again. Same unknown number. 5 minutes, the voice said. My stomach tightened. "Who is this?" I demanded. A pause. Then, "You're alone, right?" I hung up. I stood up and looked out the booth window. The parking lot was empty, snow lightly falling, everything quiet. The woods behind the complex looked darker than usual, like they were absorbing light instead of reflecting it. I locked the booth door. At 11:17, the cameras inside building B turned on. Interior motion detection. That wasn't possible. The building was locked, alarmed, and required a keycard to enter. I checked the feed. The hallway lights were off. But something was moving. A shadow passed across the camera view, slow, deliberate, human-shaped. Then the phone rang again. 3 minutes. I called dispatch this time, my voice shaking. "There's movement inside building B. I need police." Static. Then the dispatcher said, "Police won't make it in time." My blood went cold. "What do you mean?" I asked. But the line cut out. At 11:19, all the cameras froze. Every single one. The monitors went black. Except one. The feed from inside my own security booth. I was staring at myself on the screen, sitting there, pale, breathing hard. Behind me, something moved. I spun around. Nothing. When I turned back to the screen, the camera angle had changed slightly. It was closer now. Zoomed in on my face. The phone rang again. 1 minute. I screamed into the phone, "What do you want?" The voice replied calmly, "To make sure you hear it." Hear what? The countdown. At 11:59 p.m., the power went out. The booth lights died. The monitors went black. The heater shut off, and the cold rushed in instantly. Then, from somewhere inside the complex, loudspeakers crackled to life. A voice began counting. 10, 9, 8. It wasn't cheerful. It wasn't excited. It was flat. Mechanical. Wrong. I grabbed my flashlight and ran out of the booth, sprinting toward the gate. It wouldn't open. The control panel was dead. 7, 6. I heard footsteps behind me on the pavement. Slow. Heavy. Unhurried. 5. I turned the flashlight around. A man stood at the edge of the parking lot. Same silhouette I'd seen on the camera earlier. Tall. Still. Watching. 4. He lifted his phone. 3. My own phone vibrated in my hand. A text message popped up. Look up. 2. I raised the flashlight toward the booth roof. Someone was standing on top of it. Bent forward. Staring down. No one counts down for fireworks out here, the voice said from behind me. 1. The speakers went silent. So did everything else. No fireworks. No cheers. No celebration. Just quiet. The man in the lot smiled. Then every light in the complex turned back on at once. The two figures were gone. The car on the service road was gone. The speakers were silent. Police arrived 20 minutes later. They found no signs of forced entry. No footprints. No damage. No explanation. But when they reviewed the security logs, there was one entry timestamped exactly at midnight. System reset, new year initialized. I quit that job the next morning. Every New Year's Eve since, my phone still rings. Always from an unknown number. And every time, I let it go to voicemail. Because I already know what it says. 10 minutes.